Hello students and namaste everyone. I am Dhaval sir and our today's topic is from your standard ninth supplementary reader chapter number 5, The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. Right, so this is a very interesting story about a prince who used to live in a town and who was known as Happy Prince. Right, why the prince was known as Happy Prince? Because all through his life, right, he always lived happily and he had never seen any kind of sorrow or sadness in his life. Right, so after his death, uh, the happy prince statue, right, the statue of Happy Prince was erected means it was placed on a tall pedestal means a pillar, right. So it was placed on a pillar in the middle of the town, right. And the statue was covered with gold and had two precious sapphires. Sapphire means precious stones, we can say, right, gemstones, which are very very precious, right. So there were two precious sapphires uh, fitted in his eyes, and also there was a ruby, right. Again, ruby is a very precious stone which was fitted into the handle of his sword. Okay, so from there, where the statue was placed, the Happy Prince could see all around the place, and realizing that the people of his town lived in poverty and misery, right. So the statue, where the statue was placed, from that place, from that pillar, the Happy Prince statue could see all his town around, right. And when he saw it from around that place, he realized that his town was facing poverty and the people were in misery. So actually we'll think that how is it possible that a statue can see, but this is a imaginary story, right. So we can try to understand the story. uh, so this sight had actually saddened the prince, and though the prince wanted to help his people, but as it was dead, right, it was helpless, and he kept on weeping. WEEPING, weeping means crying, seeing the plight of his people, right. PLIGHT, plight means the bad or the worst situation. Okay, so suddenly one day a swallow bird, right, it is a kind of small bird. So a swallow bird was flying through that city where the Happy Prince statue was placed, and it was in its way going to Egypt to meet its friends. So this bird was actually migrating, right, to Egypt. Why? Because the place where it was living, its native place, the winters had arrived, and there are some places in the world where it is very difficult for the birds or the animals to survive the winter, right. So most probably the birds, they migrate to some warmer place, right. And the swallows, they were migrating to Egypt, but this little swallow was left behind, and therefore it was going to Egypt at last, and wanted to meet its friends, right. So it was on its way going to Egypt, and on the way it was tired, so it took shelter, right, for one night at the feet of the Happy Prince, right, below the statue. And when the bird was relaxing, it realized that some kind of drops are falling on it, right. And then the bird realized that the drops were actually the tears falling from the Happy Prince's eyes. And then the bird inquired the prince or the statue about the reason why it is crying or weeping. Then the happy prince told the whole story, right? That what is the situation, or how bad the situation is there of the people of his city, and because of which uh, he is feeling helpless and sad because it cannot help them out, right? So the helpless prince requested uh, that swallow bird, right, to help it by becoming its messenger, right? So uh, the prince tried to take the help of the swallow bird, but the bird denied, and the prince requested the bird many times, right? And finally the bird agreed and tried to help the happy prince. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, initially the bird denied, right, the request, but later on the bird agreed and tried to help the happy prince by becoming its messenger. And the first thing what the bird did was it took the ruby stone, right? It is a precious stone. So it took out the ruby stone from the handle of the sword of the happy prince, and it delivered to the seamster. Now who is a seamster, right? So seamster is a lady who sews, right, sewing the clothes. Okay, so she's the lady who sews the clothes for her earnings and for living her life, right? So the swallow bird took the ruby and went to the seamster, right? Then what happened on the next day, right, next morning, again as he went to bid goodbye, right? Why he gave the ruby to the seamster? Because her daughter was lying, and she was ill, but she did not have enough money to give her any kind of food or to look after her, and therefore the prince felt very bad, and therefore told the swallow to give the ruby to the seamster. Then, as I said, on the next morning, as the swallow bird went to the happy prince to bid him goodbye, the statue again convinced him to stay back for one more day. Right? What the happy prince said, please you stay here for one more day and please try to help me out. That day, the bird was asked to remove the sapphire. Right? As I said, the sapphire is a precious stone which were placed on the two eyes of the happy prince. Right? So, remove the sapphire stone from one of the statue's eyes and deliver it to a young playwright. Right, now who is the playwright here? It is a person who usually writes play, right, for the television or a theater, right? So the swallow was ordered to give one sapphire to the playwright. Then also on the third day, the bird had to pull out the second sapphire stone for a poor girl, right? So this is how the happy prince was trying to help out the people of his city who were in a very difficult or a bad situation, right? The bird did not want to leave the statue now, right? Why? Because the statue now had become blind, because the sapphire which were placed in the both the eyes of the happy prince were now given away, were removed and given away to the needy people. Alright, so the swallow didn't want to leave the happy prince because it had become blind, right? So the happy prince asked the bird to go around the city, right? As the bird now decided that as the happy prince has become blind, I'll not go to Egypt and I'll live here only in the city and help out the happy prince. So the happy prince asked the bird to go around the city and inform him about the condition of the people living over there and who needed money for their survival, right? So gradually the statue of the happy prince ordered the swallow bird to slowly and gradually take out the foils of the gold, right, gold foils from its body, and give it to the people who are in the need, right. So slowly and gradually the swallow bird started removing the foils from the happy prince's body, the body which was made up of gold, and it started distributing among the needy people for their survival. Now gradually the statue of happy prince, right, as slowly and gradually all the gold foils were removed from the statue, right, it had become dull and grey, right. So uh, on the other day, on the other hand, the poor, right, one side the statue was becoming dull and grey, and on the other side the poor people who were not having anything to eat also, right, those people had started becoming happy, joyous or joyful, right, because they were getting bread to eat. Okay. Now the swallow bird was unable to withstand the cold weather, because slowly and gradually the winter was arriving and it was becoming more and more chilly, right, that means it was becoming more and more cold. Okay. And therefore the bird realized that it cannot withstand more cold, and it was uh, about to die. Okay. So it informed the statue of happy prince that it had to live, and the statue who loved the bird so much asked it to kiss him, right. The happy prince told the bird to kiss him, right. And as the bird means bird kissed the happy prince, and it died on the spot and fell at the statue's feet, right. Then later on, a strange sound, as the bird fell down on the feet of the happy prince, a strange sound came out of the statue, as if it was the sound of the breaking of the heart of the statue, right. Though the statue was made up of the heart in the statue was made up of lead, right. Then too, at the death of the bird, it cracked, that means the heart was broken of the happy prince, right. As it was overwhelmed with the affection and the love which was shown by the bird towards the happy prince, right. So it was very sad, happy prince. And then later on, the mayor of that city was on a round with his councillors, and when he saw the statue of happy prince, he said that the statue of happy prince is looking just better than the beggar, right. That means the situation or the status of the statue of happy prince had become very bad, and at that same time even the bird which was dead was lying at the feet of the happy prince, right. And therefore he ordered his councillors to remove this statue from that place, because it no longer looked beautiful. Then later on, the statue of happy prince was taken to the furnace, right. That means it was ordered to be melted, so it was taken to the furnace, right. And where the happy prince statue was put in furnace for melting. But what happened was, the heart of happy prince, though it was made up of lead, right, though it was made up of lead, it did not melt, right. So the person at the furnace told that this heart won't melt, and therefore we should throw it away in the garbage. And the heart of the happy prince was thrown away in the garbage, where even the little swallow bird which was dead was lying. And then at the end, the god orders its angels to bring two most beautiful, right? So here the story gets end, and at the end what is given, that is the God orders its angels to bring two things, two precious things from the earth, right? And the angel goes to the earth and it finds the heart which was of the happy prince and the bird which was dead, right? So I'll show you the paragraph which states that, okay, yeah, here. So what is the God saying over here? You can see, right? Bring me the two most precious things in the city, said God to one of his angels, and the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bird, right? Because those two were the most precious thing, right? Then when the angel goes back to the God and shows the two precious thing, the God says that you have rightly chosen it, right? Because the bird which was the swallow bird, right, had helped the happy prince in doing good deeds, and therefore this bird will stay in my garden, right, of paradise, and it will sing forever, right? And the happy prince will praise me.